Hey, I'm Matt. This is the 10-minute Bible Hour. And the other day I came into my office and the coolest thing happened. There was a box sitting here on my desk, and inside was a whole bunch of sweet fly fishing stuff. This guy named Wade, who watches the show, thank you, Wade, by the way, sent me a fly fishing care package. Are you kidding me? That's like Christmas for a person like me. And right, the centerpiece of the whole thing, right on top, was this limited edition Jack Daniel's fly tin. And if you pop this thing open, you see there's bonus inside. Wade tied all of these flies himself. And none of them are the same. They all do different things. And part of the fun of fly fishing, when you get into it, is you figure out real quick, it's not like you just pick some lure and throw it at things and hope it works out. There's a strategy to it. And each little microscopic difference amongst the flies is going to have a different effect on the fish. One might work one day, another might work another day. It's like fish hunting. It's really, really fun. But that extra layer of complexity is kind of a shock to the system when you get started in this hobby. Likewise, when you get started in seriously looking at the Bible for yourself, and you start thinking, I need to get a Bible that can be my study companion that I drag around with me and flip through. You might think you're just going to go and get one and it's going to be really simple. But when you actually go to the store where they sell the Bibles to look at them, you realize there are like 11 billion different options, and it can be kind of intimidating to sort through all those options and features to know what you want and what you don't want and which Bible makes sense for you. So in this video, I want to help you sort through that. And to get to the bottom of it, I know just the place to go to learn what we need to. So come on, let's go. It'll be fun. This is where I keep my study Bibles. I thought I'd bring them back over to the desk and we could talk about them. Come on, let's go. It'll be fun. Gee willikers, mister, that's a lot of Bibles and probably a lot of stuff that we have to learn. So let's get started. All right, before we talk about the merit of all of these fancy study Bibles and all the features that are in there, I first want to talk about the merit of not study Bibles. This is your plain Jane, stripped down, boring version of the Bible. Mine has packing tape on the back, so you know it's important. It's aqua. It comes in these handsome cardboard covers to keep costs down. And the cool thing about these is, honestly, a couple bucks on Amazon, and you can get a basic Bible. Or maybe steal one from a hotel room. I don't know if you're actually allowed to steal them from hotel rooms. I don't know, make good moral decisions on that front. The point is this: they're accessible, they're affordable, and there is merit to there being nothing in them. This is just the text of the Bible, plus only chapter and verse numbers, which were added after the fact, and a few italicized little section headings that are set apart by italics, so you know it's not part of the Bible. And then most pages will have a few translation notes, so that you can understand a little bit more about the original language if it's a spot where that could be interpreted one of two ways. This one does have a map, one map. Oh, this thing's coming apart. And I think, yeah, this is a red letter edition that puts the words of Jesus in red because, I don't know, we used to put the words of Jesus in red in most of our Bibles. That's it. So why is that useful? Well, it's useful if you want to drown out the noise and put on the blinders and just spend some time with you and the Bible without accidentally incorporating other people's opinions or theologies, which might be wonderful opinions or theologies, but this sets that stuff aside and just gets you in touch with the text. It's worth having one of these, but if you're like me, it's also worth having one or several of these. The cool thing about study Bible and Christian scholarship in general is that, just like with any field, we have the opportunity to stand on the shoulders of the giants who came before us. We have the opportunity to benefit from all the work that people have put in, not just to formulating opinions. And we had an opinion council and we made opinions about the Bible and Jesus, and now we put the opinions in here. No, I mean just cataloging it. What connects with what overlaps with what creates friction with what. It's really nice not to have to do all of that work yourself. And that's just one of the many benefits of these study Bibles. So now we need to actually talk about how these things work. And to do that, we're going to start with this fella right here. My ESV Study Bible is the one that I picked out because it was going to be my cool Rockstar Study Bible. Everybody's buying one of these now. I don't want to look dumb at parties around my study Bible friends. I thought I'd get this and I'd use it all the time. But you know why I don't use it all the time? Because check this out. Seriously, did you hear that? And I'm sorry that you're cursing me right now because I keep forgetting to put a high pass filter on this, so you get all of that bass. But compare that with this. Sound warning. Are you kidding me? Like, that is way louder than that, and I dropped them from exactly the same height. So that is science to prove that that Bible is easier and simpler. Honestly, one of the things you want to consider about a study Bible on the front end is that they're expensive, and two, they really can get so unwieldy that you don't use them that much. This guy still smells so good. On the other hand, is my little NIV study Bible, and it doesn't make that loud thump quite as much. It fits in the side pocket of my truck, it fits in my bag, so as a result, this gets used more, even though I like the notes and resources in this more. Just food for thought. So we crack this thing open, and what you'll find is a whole bunch of really handy features right from the beginning, including, oh, forgot about this one. If you can't remember who died recently in your family, you could write it right there in the death section. I can't vouch for that. I'm not sure why that's in there. One of the first things you're going to look at when you get any Bible is this introduction section. It really does matter because this is where the translators turn over their cards as to what their interpretive philosophy is for going from the source language, Hebrew, Greek, whatever, into, well, English if you're watching this video. So you get past those translation notes, and then you usually get some big picture theology stuff, like a section on what's the point of the Bible, how does the theology of the Bible work, or maybe in this case, here's a whole section introducing you to the Old Testament in general. The theology of the Old Testament. Why would you want to read that first? If you're like me, well, at least like how I was until somebody set me straight, you might think, like, I don't read introductions. Introductions are for posers. Prologues, give me a break. That stuff's stupid. Get me into the stuff that's actually assigned. But here's a dirty little secret about books. Those introductions and those prologues are ridiculously important because they're there to help frame what you're about to encounter, to introduce you to the thesis and the big points that you might miss on your first pass if somebody's not providing you with a little bit of direction. Now, you might be thinking, I don't want to be steered when it comes to the Bible. I just want to encounter my Bible raw and get it right. Cool, remember? We have a solution for that. It's this one right here. Steal it from your local hotel. No prompting in this. But if you want some prompting, because the Old Testament is massive and overwhelming and can be, frankly, kind of confusing on a lot of levels, well, a theology of the Old Testament that is short and manageable can be a big help. Next up, here's what you're going to find. The books of the Bible will all have massive introductions in these study Bibles. I really like this Esv Study Bible's introduction to the books. It talks about who the author was, when it was written. It's not afraid to bring you even into some of the controversies about who might have written it, what critics of the Bible point out about it. It talks about the key themes and the outlines. It breaks it down in a couple different ways so you can track with the argument of the book. It'll give you a little bit of extra biblical history so you can set this in context for yourself. And it really does set you up for success as you get into the text of the Bible proper. Now, here's the thing. When you do get into the text of the Bible proper, some of these study Bibles will almost overwhelm you with the notes. And the next feature of a study Bible that I want to draw your attention to is this right here. In this text, that is the actual Bible. That, right? Look at that. That, right there. 2 verses. These are the notes. Dang. Well, it's not like that on every page, but I mean, you're smart. You know, there's probably a little bit of controversy associated with Genesis 1:1 and the origin of all things. I mean, there's a little skin in the game that people have for that. So there's a lot of commentary on it and a lot going on here. But these notes are generally written by a committee or by one theologian who's working under the supervision of a larger committee. And most of these study Bibles are trying to be somewhat conciliatory within a certain Christian tradition, a certain brand of Christianity. So the ESV, for example, is not like, well, that's your Southern Baptist Convention Bible, or That is your United Methodist Church Bible. It's a bigger umbrella thing than that, but still, these notes can be a blessing and a curse. There's stuff that I still remember from my first childhood study Bible that I got, where I internalized the notes a little bit uncritically. And I got woven into my faith, and as my faith was evolving and my understanding of the Bible was evolving, I still had this lingering stuff that was kind of hard to reconcile later. So these are useful for pointing us in a good direction, but I'd encourage you to use them with caution and to compare notes with a whole bunch of other stuff and think for yourself. Another feature that I want to draw your attention to here is this little tiny section in the corner that's got a whole bunch of verses listed. This is a cross-reference, or in some Bibles, a chain reference note. And what this does is it tags similar themes in each verse that can be found in other verses all over the Bible. So let's say you're like, wow, I don't know quite what to make of Genesis 1:1. I'd like to know what other parts of the Bible have to say about Genesis 1:1. Well, if you're using this, then the technique I would recommend for answering that question would be to read the entire Bible from front to back while thinking about Genesis 1:1 in your mind and perhaps writing it down when verses come up that reference it. If you got stuff to do this week and that just isn't a practical option, you might enjoy a Bible that has this chain reference or cross-reference thing. It just gives you a whole bunch, and let's say you were to run over to, what do we have? Isaiah 4:25. I don't know what that says, but I'm sure it's really good. And let's say you went over there and you were like, wow, that says some more stuff about creation and God's role in making things. I wonder what other parts of the Bible say stuff that sounds kind of like this thing from Isaiah 4. Well, guess what? Isaiah 4 is going to have that too. And you can just start bouncing all over the Bible and doing your own work, which is a really good idea based on what I was just saying a second ago, because the notes are useful, but the notes are not God, the notes are not inspired, the notes are not king. So, another thing I want to point out is something I mentioned when talking about this Bible, and that is that down here on the bottom, in italics, between the text of the Bible and the notes, you will get translation notes, and those are going to be different from version to version. The translation committee, in this case behind the English Standard Version, the ESV, is going to get hung up on or arrive at questions about different words in the Old Testament than maybe the NIV committee might. Well, they'll give you a little bit of insight into what they grappled with and other reasonable readings of some of these passages or words right here in these little notes. Again, very important for your own study if you want to push beyond just whatever these people figured out and decided. So flipping ahead to the New Testament, another thing that you'll see is a lot of these study Bibles now, they are breaking the bank to hire really good artists to illustrate stuff that you might have questions about. So the temple is a super important building in both the Old Testament and the New Testament. The Jews took a couple different runs at making these temples. And at the time of Jesus, well, the temple was different than it was in the Old Testament, and it factors into his story a lot. Well, stories are better when you can kind of picture what's going on. Ta-da! That makes this really, really useful. So these cool new study Bibles have got all kinds of illustrations, and you can lean on that. They've got little maps in text. Ooh, check this out. Here's a little thing. You run into a passage in John here that seems to be very Trinitarian in nature. That is the idea of God being three persons in one. Maybe you're going through that and you're like, I know I'm supposed to believe that as a Christian, but why? Well, they've got some theological helps in the notes that bounce you around, that get you in depth as to how some of that works. Look at this. Right there in Acts, full color map, super helpful. Yeah, we'll talk more about maps in just a second. So you get done with your Bible and you've got all these notes and everything in here. And then a lot of these Bibles now, the study Bibles that is, are having huge appendices at the end. So for example, the appendices in this Bible start right there. It's like a whole book unto itself. This one includes theological appendices about what all of this says in terms of salvation, how it points to the nature of the Bible itself, what it says about God the Father and God the Son and the Holy Spirit and the church and sin and all the different things that, as somebody who's interested in Christianity, you need to have a sense of. Again, you can make of it whatever you want to, but you need to have a sense of it. So this helps pull back together the work you just did And then this one has some suggestions for how to read the Bible effectively. There's some stuff about church history in here, things we've covered in videos on this channel about where the Bible came from, how it was assembled, what a canon is, all of that kind of stuff. They have a little section in here on archaeology. How fun is that? I don't think I've ever seen one with a section on archaeology. This is cool. There's a chart in here that shows you all the places where the Old Testament is referenced in the New Testament. Again, you could do this on your own, but it would take an eternity. So why not stand on the shoulders of these folks? And then you get into something that is really, really useful. I'm still flipping to get there. Here it is. This is called a concordance. This is one of the best Bible cheats in the world for early students of biblical studies, because if you can't remember where something is, but you can even remember like one word from the verse, you can just look up that word in a concordance and it'll give you all the verses where that word came up. Well, this is also pretty useful if you're trying to study the Bible for yourself, but it's hard to remember everything because the book is that thick and rattles my desk when you drop it. This can help you pull back up things that are in the fringes of your memory. And as a concordance, whatever you have in the back of a study Bible is going to be limited. I mean, an actual concordance is... I was looking for this last time and I couldn't find it. Here it is. An actual concordance is this big. Do you want me to drop it? Should I drop it? Do you want me to drop it? Plug your ears. I'm going to drop it. That's even gargantucer because there's a lot of Bible. But the ones that are super popular, the ones that are going to be familiar, important verses for Christian living and things like that, they're all going to be in here. So that is very useful as well. And then finally, and I know you've been waiting on this one because it's kind of the highlight of all of the study helps within a Bible, and that is the maps. Here's why the maps are important, and I'm not kidding about this. I love the maps because they provide some kind of mental context for where all of this is happening. There are religious books that are written that are absolutely divorced from historical geographical reality, and they just plug right on ahead anyway. But the Bible actually happened in places, and the names line up, and it works, and if it didn't, I suppose it wouldn't have been preserved because it would have been easily dismissed as a fraud. But these maps are beautiful, they're artfully done, they enable you to picture what the landscape was like, how long it would have taken to get from here to there. And they give you hooks in your brain to hang ideas and stories on. You ever read the Lord of the Rings books? You go through those 3 thick volumes, and there's so many names and locations. You can't remember what's north and south and where. But one of the treats of those books is that beautiful Tolkien font map that's at the beginning of each of those. I mean, it's absolutely iconic at this point in history. And those are there for a reason, because Tolkien knew his story was sweeping and covered a big chunk of history and was potentially overwhelming. And those help it to feel more like, real places, real times, real things, even though it unapologetically is fiction. Here's the deal. These study Bibles are an incredibly useful tool. There's a ton of factors to take into account. I'm going to make a video next where we talk about the different volumes of study Bibles, specifically by version and by style, because not all of these are coming from the same angle. So it's not just the features that you need to consider when you pick one of these up or think about buying one for yourself. It's also who put this together? Why did they put it together? What is the theological slant of this Bible? What are the notes and resources in my study Bible actually trying to accomplish? Does it do what I want to do? It's too much for this video, so I'll get to that a little bit later on, but hopefully this is useful as maybe a walking tour of how this very important resource can be navigated. I'm going to call it quits right there. Thanks a ton for being a part of this. There's a bunch of you who support me on Patreon, which is just ridiculous of you in a good way. So thanks enormously to everybody who kicks in and makes it easier for me to do more stuff and to keep after this, because I'm having fun. I'm glad at least some of you are as well. If you're into the support people on Patreon thing, I guess you can do that. Patreon.com/TMBH. If you're not into that, it's completely cool. Either way, I'm just glad you're here. And we'll pick it up talking more about how these Bibles work next time around. I'm Matt. It's 10 Minute Bible Hour. Catch you soon.